Welcome to Codex, History of Video Games. I'm Mike Coletta.
And I'm Tyler Osby.
And today we're doing a discussion episode on just kind of our favorite game mechanics.
I love it. We have a lot of favorite game mechanics.
We sure do.
Yeah, I love to talk about stuff. I guess let's define like what we mean by game mechanics here. And I think that means like a sort of broad, not necessarily broad, but like a sort of like a specific category of things that we like. Like I'll just jump into it. Here's my first one that is one of my favorite game mechanics in any game, and it's the gravity gun from Half-Life 2.
It's a perfect game mechanic right there, I think.
It really is. So for those unaware, if you haven't played Half-Life 2, you are extremely lucky because now you get to play it for the first time ever. You should go and play it right now. I'm very jealous of you getting to play it for the first time. But at a certain point in the game, you will get the gravity gun, and the gravity gun doesn't really hurt things directly, although I think you can like shock headcrabs with it and eventually kill them with like 5 hits from it. But that's not the point of this gun. The point of this gun is to pick up any object that's like basically not nailed down in the world of Half-Life 2. And all of that stuff has like really good physics attached to it. Half-Life 2 is like one of the first games where like the physics was a really big part of the actual game. And they were really good and really fun. And so the gravity gun lets you pick things up and throw them. And things in the world of Half-Life 2 have weight to them. So if you pick up a cinder block and fire it at an enemy, they're going to take cinder block damage, which it basically will do what you would expect a cinder block to do. If you pick up something like a saw blade, you're going to be throwing that at bad guys. You'll be cutting them in half and stuff.
It's so fun in Ravenholm.
It's so fun. That's when you get it too. It's like you think you get the gun and then you go to Ravenholm, and it's like for a large section of that map, I think you can only use the gravity gun.
Yeah.
It's just so fun to pick stuff up and throw it. And then towards the end of the game, spoilers here because this game's 20 years old almost now. Oh man, that has made me feel really old because I remember when this game was brand new. It gets like towards the end, it gets sort of zapped by some sort of, I don't know, science happens to it. And then you can actually pick up enemies. And that's how you have to get through the final section of the game, is by picking up enemy combine soldiers and like launching them at other people. So it's like this perfect, and Half-Life 2 is full of this, but like introducing a game mechanic, letting you play around with it, showing you the different ways you can mix it up, and then upping the stakes of that game mechanic and saying, okay, now that you know how it works, what if we do this? Now you can pick up enemies and throw them at each other. What does that do? And like the physics of it is really fun, and the way the enemies like flail around when you throw them around is pretty funny. So yeah, that's my first like game mechanics. So that's the kind of stuff we're talking about here, is gravity guns of the gaming industry, the gaming world, I guess.
I also think that we're going to see the pattern of how people introduce mechanics and then raise the stakes. That's like a common theme with a lot of these.
Yeah, that's a really good way to design games, I think. If you can do it without having to give the player like a tutorial, right? Of like, give them a box of text that says, here's the gravity gun. If you use it on things, you'll pick it up. Like, just give it to them, show them in like a small controlled area how it works, and then say, okay, well, let's up the stakes a little bit here. What if you're put under some pressure here? How can you utilize this mechanic differently? And then start to test the player's ability to like, okay, how can you use this creatively? How can you use it creatively under pressure, right? I think the Portal series does a really good job of that too.
Yeah, definitely. We're going to talk about that later for sure. So do you want my next one?
Yeah, let's hear what your first game mechanic is, Mike.
My first game mechanic is glory kills in Doom 2016.
Oh, yeah.
I love Doom 2016 and Doom Eternal. Can't get enough of it. Been thinking about like booting it up again because it's been so long and I just love it so much. But I think I was in the camp of people where I thought that glory kills would like slow the game down, when in reality, they just like make that flow state happen. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where you're just like murdering demons and then you get more ammo and health and you just keep going. And that's why it's so fun to me. Also, the game just feels good in that way. It's so different from modern shooters where it's like sit behind cover, wait for your health to come back. Like it just, and that feels good too. That mechanic of like speed.
If you play that way, and like other games will reward you for playing, you will get a lot less ammo and you'll run out of ammo, and then you'll be really in trouble in that game. Like Doom, the newer Dooms really reward you for getting right in there and getting close enough to get those glory kills and like not stopping the pace, because you don't get very much ammo in that game. Like your max ammo that you can hold is not very much, but they throw ammo at you constantly. If you're killing bad guys and doing glory kills, you will have enough ammo, but you have to keep playing. If you start slowing down, you'll get less ammo and then it's less fun.
The other thing for me too is this like makes you also feel super powerful, which is what I like about Doom. That's what it is. It makes you feel super powerful. And that's something that I like. And I think it's why I play Destiny also. You know, you want to feel like you're really a cool, awesome hero type. Or
Space
villain.
Wizard.
Space Wizard. Space magic. But in this case, you are the Doom Marine and you can't stop.
Yeah.
You can't stop stopping, you know?
Never stop, never stopping.
Never stop, never stopping. That's it. Never stop, never stopping. So that's my first mechanic is Doom and the modern Dooms, Doom 2016 and Doom Eternal.
Are there any other games that do something like that reward you so clearly and so viscerally for playing the game how it's like sort of designed to be played, I guess?
Well, I'm going to talk about Titanfall's parkour system later on down the line. And that kind of is like that too, I think. You know, they want you to kind of play fast and like run along walls and stuff like that.
Yeah,
but
okay.
I don't think into that degree of Doom 2016.
Yeah. I think I can go into my second mechanic here. I think something that is one of those like sort of inherently rewarding game loops is traversal of an open world. Like all these open worlds that we have are really great. Well, some of them are better than others. I think the things that separates a good open world from a great open world is how you traverse that open world. Like, how do you get from place to place? And some games say, you move really slowly and we'll just give you fast travel and it's fine. You will not be bored by the travel. Like, that's sort of like a best of the worst case scenario. The worst case scenario is like, well, you're really slow and you have to walk everywhere and the world is huge. So sorry about that. The best of that scenario is like you're slow and you have to walk everywhere, or you can fast travel where you just like pick the spot from a map. But the games that do it the best and the games that have the best feeling open worlds are the ones where the movement through that open world is inherently fun on its own. I'm talking about games like Breath of the Wild with the leaf thing that you float on, you know, that you can go really far distances and like see so far out into the distance while you're flying there and you can see where you're trying to get to. That's really fun. And you can climb anything. You know, you have like a stamina bar, but you can climb anything. I really enjoy that stuff. I think the Batman Arkham City, Arkham Origins, and Arkham Knight, because those are open world. Arkham Asylum is like sort of open world, but not to the same degree. And I think like using the grappling hook to launch yourself up into the sky and then floating somewhere as Batman is peak Batman fantasy and makes traveling through Gotham City or Arkham City like extremely fun, to the point where like if a fast travel system is given to me, I won't use it in these games because the traveling is like, when I see on the other end of the map they're like, oh, I have to go all the way to the other end, it's so far, I get excited because it's so fun to travel. That's what I think is really good. And I think the new Spider-Man games are like that too. They have fast travel in them. I never used it, like almost never, because it was so much fun to just web swing around the city. And so when something is far away, I'm like, sweet, I get to web swing. And they also add in a bunch of stuff like the random sort of J. Jonah Jameson podcasts that come up that you like wouldn't get if you were fast traveling. You just you just swing around and you can hear J. Jonah Jameson doing his like Alex Jones conspiracy theory stuff, which I think is really fun. You know what else? That's like kind of like GTA in a way too. Like you want to drive between places in Grand Theft Auto. Because the driving is inherently fun in most of
your radio, yeah.
And then there's like later on in those games you get like jets and stuff that you can fly around. That makes traversing the world like fun in and of itself. I'm trying to think of other like really good open world games that did the same thing. The new Halo, while I disagree that it is a great traversal of the open world, the grappling hook does feel really good. Yeah, the grappling hook is pretty fun. It is fun to grappling hook on places in the open world. I think games that don't do this well, and I'm going to preface by saying I love these games, so no one at me, but Skyrim and Fallout, like Elder Scrolls games and Fallout games, you start
walking everywhere and you start fast traveling all the time very quickly. You know what I mean? And it's because they're just so big.
Yeah, they're so big, they're so slow, like walking from the one end of the map to the next takes so long. And it has helped that all of those games, well, the Fallout series especially, have like really good soundtracks, so I like listening to the music while I'm walking. If I have to go back and forth between two locations, I'm like not necessarily excited to go back over areas I've already been over, so I'll just fast travel. Which is, I mean, I'm glad that they give you that option. Like, not every game needs to have fun traversal of their open world. If you're going to choose to not do that, then you need to put fast travel in the game, I think.
I agree. Also, I mean, Skyrim's got the horse that you can ride, but it just doesn't feel as fun as like other games.
It's faster, but it's not more fun, you know?
Honestly, the one that I think of as now like a real slog after a while is Red Dead Redemption 2. Felt very much that way to me. I liked it. Don't get me wrong. I love the game. I played so many hours of that game, but I definitely started fast traveling in the end.
Yeah. Yeah. Once you sort of get tired of seeing the same areas over and over again, or the amount of time it takes to do stuff, and it's not fun in that time where you're just like holding forward on the joystick, it's like, bah.
Yeah, totally. Well, do you feel good? I feel good about that. That's a great point. That's something I very much agree with you with too. Because like world travel in an open world game means so much to me. And I think there's a lot of forgettable, like, to me, Far Cry is kind of forgettable in that way, you know, because in Far Cry 3 and on, it definitely feels like, I got to get this tower. You know, that's what it feels like the whole time.
Yeah, so that you can do the fast travel.
And even though Breath of the Wild has those tower mechanics, it never felt that sloggy because of how you got there was different each time.
Well, and even when you fast travel to a tower in Breath of the Wild, you're at the top of this tower now, and maybe Far Cry is similar to this. I haven't really played Far Cry, so maybe I'm wrong here. But on Breath of the Wild, you're on top of this tower now. You can just take a run and a jump in the direction you want to go and just float for so long on the leaf. That's so fun. I just think like just floating is so like serene and just like relaxing, and you can see like there's a draw distance is so big you can see everything in front of you. It's like it lets you take the world in and really appreciate the scale of the world too, because Breath of the Wild is huge.
It really is, and I love it. And the castle looks so cool from like far away, and everything.
Yeah, and you can see it from basically anywhere on the map.
Oh yeah, I love it so much. Yeah, it's so good. Well, I'm gonna move on to my next one, which is I'm excited because I think this is where we're gonna disagree. So I'm excited. Yeah, my second game mechanic that I like is the Dark Souls system of enemy respawns in saving.
Oh boy.
And I'm talking Souls games, and I'm talking games I've really enjoyed that I didn't even know were Dark Soulsy until I started playing. Like Jedi Fallen Order, I did not know was Dark Soulsy until I almost beat it.
Oh yeah, it's basically Dark Souls but Star Wars.
Yeah, and then Tunic, definitely I knew that going into it. But yeah, I love the idea of enemies respawning after you've cleared an area because it kind of adds tension and strategy to the game to make you be like, okay, do I want to save here? Do I want to risk it all and keep going? It's like a gambling risk reward situation, which I think is really fun. And in Tunic, they kind of pare it down so it's not as bad. Like in Tunic, you can only lose like max 20 of your little gold coins when you die, which I think is pretty cool. Mm-hmm. Now, if you keep failing to get your body, you keep losing more and more. But I always try to grab my body immediately.
Yeah, me too.
But this whole thing to me, like Jedi Fallen Order was really where I felt the strategy to be like, do I want to fight that trooper, like that dark trooper again? Or do I want to try to like go on to the next area and see how far I can get? And I really had a good time like making those choices for myself. And it felt like I wasn't being like pushed along. Mm-hmm. And it also made me like it too, because the whole point of the game is like, if you don't feel powerful, you can go kill more enemies, get more experience, be more powerful. And that was really fun too. I just had to do that in Tunic because I did not know how to upgrade my fox. Oh, I got a real swole fox now.
Real swole fox. Is that his name? Swole fox?
Swole fox. He's Star Fox's ripped cousin, Swole Fox.
Swole fox. Oh man, that is funny. You're right, because I wholeheartedly disagree on this one. I don't like that mechanic. I don't like the room that I've already cleared like comes back because I've decided to save or to rest at a campfire. To me, that rest, like it doesn't feel like a rest if everything I just fought comes back now. It feels like a decision I don't want to make. Like you're right. There's like, I can understand the appeal of like, oh, the risk reward of like, well, do I want to keep moving forward, or do I want to save and have to maybe fight the same stuff again? I don't ever want to fight the same stuff again, and I hate being made to make that choice because I like when the save spot or the replenish your health spot or whatever is like a true respite where it's like, okay, I'm here. This is a real checkpoint. I'm now I'm fully healed. I can like move on. And I don't ever want to like skip that or make it feel like it's not that. And the trade-off of having to respawn all the enemies and use that thing is like just does not feel good to me. I don't like it.
You want that feeling of sanctuary, like you've made
exactly.
it.
Right. I don't want to sacrifice anything for that sanctuary because it just stresses me out. Because then I'm like, oh, this is it's just not a choice that I find value in making. I feel like it's just two bad decisions, and I'm not going to like either of them. So I just have to pick the one I think is less bad.
Putting you between a rock and a hard place, as the old adage is. Yeah, I also, the other feeling I like too is when I play games like this and I'm bad, but because I have to play enemies so much after saving, I get good. And that feeling of growth that comes from that is also something I enjoy. But I 100% know where you're coming from, because that feeling of like, I made it to the checkpoint is also this like feeling of accomplishment and relief. And Dark Souls is definitely taking that away from you.
Yeah.
That's something that I think we can agree to disagree on. And also, there are definitely times where I am not in the mood to play a game like this.
Yeah.
Tunic a couple times this week has really brought me down.
Really? I don't mind it in Tunic because I think the fighting in Tunic is not like, so I also just generally dislike the type of fighting that's in a Dark Souls style game. Like having to do things I've already done with this combat system I don't enjoy is like double whammy. Tunic, though, I do kind of enjoy it because it's a really simple form of like Dark Souls combat. So I don't necessarily mind fighting the same stuff over and over. But I'm sorry, I cut you off. You're going to say something.
Oh, it's just that I spent 3 hours fighting one boss in Tunic.
Oof. Well, I haven't got there yet.
It made me feel so bad at the video game. But then when I beat it, I like raised my hands over my head and I was like, I am victorious. Moment. Yes. I should have shotgunned a Mountain Dew when I won.
Oh, yeah. Shotgun a Mountain Dew, ate an entire bag of Doritos.
Really crushed it. Just snorted G Fuel. I don't know. Just something.
Yeah.
To make.
That sounds awful.
Yeah, I know, right? Is this powder, right? That is powder. I've never had G Fuel, by the way. It's powder.
Is it a powder?
I thought it's a powder. Is that not true?
Oh, I don't know.
Well, you can still snort it, I guess.
I guess we're not real gamers.
So much for our clean podcast. I don't think that's bad. All right. So that's my take on Dark Souls game mechanics. I'm ready for your next one.
So my next one is I'm going to pick on a very specific game. There are more games that do variations of this mechanic, but the one I love the most is how the game Wet does slow-mo. And this is, I've talked about Wet on the podcast before as like sort of my like dark horse. What's one of your favorite games that no one knows about? And it's the 2009 game Wet.
I still haven't played this, and you've talked about it quite a bit, and I feel like I've really missed out in this situation.
It's so fun. And there's no like, they didn't do any remakes of it. There's no PC version. It's like you have to play it on an Xbox 360 or PlayStation 3, and that's it. You might be able to get it running in an emulator, like a PlayStation 3 emulator, but it has a really like sort of grindhouse aesthetic, like old B movie like style of like campiness to it. And one of the mechanics is whenever you're in the air, if you've jumped or you've jumped off a ledge or whatever, you can make the game go in slow motion, and then you can just fire your pistols, and you can aim one of them and the other one will kind of aim itself. There's different kinds of guns that will all kind of interact with the slow-mo differently, but it's unlimited slow-mo, and you can do it forever, and you just like rack up the headshots or whatever. Like it feels like a real movie scene, where the hero like runs and jumps and dives and it's all slow motion, and they like just blast every single person in the room, even though you're like, there's no way you had enough time during that 3-second fall to kill 10 people in this room. In Wet, you have that amount of time to kill 10 people in the room. And it ups your score the more people you kill in the same sort of slow-mo session. So like once you hit the ground, then the slow motion stops and you have to jump again. So you have unlimited until you hit the ground, basically. And I just love it. It's so fun. And it's one of those skills that because it's unlimited, you just use it all the time. And like that's the whole point of it, is to just always be in slow motion. And I love it. Fear does it too. We've talked about Fear on the podcast, but it's like a resource. You can only do it so often in Fear. And so it doesn't quite feel the same way. Also, Fear just has a different aesthetic of like being a much more serious and scary game than Wet. But I highly recommend playing Wet if you get the chance, because man, that is a game that is a sleeper hit for me. I love that game.
Dude, you made me instantly think of Max Payne also.
Yeah, Max Payne does that too. Yep.
But Max
is
Payne
kind of an evolution of that.
Also had a meter. There was a era in the mid to late 2000s where every game had slow-mo, I feel like.
Yeah, and I think Wet did it best.
That's great. And it's a cool thing. You know, it would be kind of refreshing if a slow-mo game came back. You know, maybe it's like a small indie that just really crushed the slow-mo like Wet did.
I'm sure there's something out there that does it.
I would love it. But yeah, that's a great...
If you know of a great slow-mo game, email us.
Email us, codexhistorypodcast@gmail.com. All right, you ready for my third one?
Yes.
Titanfall 2's parkour system. I mentioned this earlier. And this kind of goes back to the Doom Glory Kills, where like I love a gameplay system that puts you in that flow state. And that's what this does for me. And the parkour mechanics in both Titanfall 1 and Titanfall 2 are really good. The reason I'm showcasing Titanfall 2, though, above the previous game, is the parkour is really fun in the single-player mode.
Oh, okay.
The level design makes you think about, like, you start seeing how the developers want you to go, like, because you're like, oh, I can, like, jump from there to there and there to there and there to there, and you can kind of, like, figure it out. And eventually you just start wall running like a champion, and it feels really cool. And you also have a gun that you just shoot in the general direction of enemies, and it like homes in. And It's awesome. And it just feels really cool. Yeah, I love a game that makes you feel like a real hero, a real champion. And Titanfall 2 really does that, while also giving you like a gut-wrenching story at the same time.
I gotta play Titanfall 2 still.
It's on Game Pass. It's ready for it. It's also not very long, which is cool about it.
Yeah. Maybe I will play it on the plane.
Yeah, that'd be dope.
My little handheld PC. Maybe I will have to take that with me. I was going to leave it at home, but maybe I'll take it with me.
Yeah, I think you'll have a good time, but don't cry on the plane. That's all I'm going to say.
Oh, it's one of those, huh?
It got me pretty emotional. You know, I loved it. You know, just the relationship between a man and his robot mech thing.
Yep.
You got to love it.
Yep. Did you play Mirror's Edge?
What's funny is I didn't play Mirror's Edge, and I know you like Mirror's Edge a lot, right? We've talked about
Mirror's Edge.
And I feel like I watched friends play it, but I never got to experience it myself. So maybe now I should go back. Was the sequel good?
It was okay. The parkour stuff was good, but it felt like the open world aspect of it was not great. The parkour stuff is very fun on a small scale level of like traversing like the smaller levels of the first game. When you're using it to traverse an open world, it's not super fun. And it was a huge open world, and it was like Ubisoft, like, oh, walk to all the icons on the map and then do the thing or collect the thing. So it was like almost cool, but it just ended up not really being as fun as the first one because of that. It wasn't as focused. Gotcha.
Okay, well, yeah, you know what? You play Titanfall 2 and I'll play Mirror's Edge. So I think Mirror's Edge is also free on something, I'm pretty sure.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's old enough at this point. I'm sure you can find it somewhere that's either very cheap or free.
Nice. Yeah, I'm going to do that. What's your next one?
My next one is like a powering up system, like not a leveling up system, but like a system of getting more powerful. Lots of games do this, but gaining power without just adding numbers. So like, oh, I don't just hit harder, but like in a Zelda game, I get a new item, and that new item allows me to solve a puzzle in a different way or access a new area. And like you grow in power by the time you get to Ganon. You don't feel prepared in the sense that like, oh, I'm going to hit him hard enough to do enough damage. You feel prepared in the sense that I have all the tools in my backpack I need to win this fight. And I think that's really cool. I think the Metroid series does a really good job of that too, especially for the like Metroid is really good about like showing you something that you can't do yet, and then when you get the new item, you go, oh, and then you remember, or you try to remember all the places on the map before where you saw that thing, and then you can go back and do it. Yeah, but Zelda, I think, does a great job, especially Breath of the Wild, because you can go to Ganon immediately in Breath of the Wild, and you might have a bad time if you don't have the powers that you get from the not dungeons in that game. There is also like a straight numbers power up system in Zelda of like getting a longer stamina bar and more hearts and weapons that are better, that kind of thing. But I love, like, especially something like traditional Zelda games for just giving you all the tools to feel prepared for any particular fight. Yeah, so that's what I like. I think it's very cool to power up without just slapping numbers on your guy or like more health or more damage or whatever.
Honestly, this might be my favorite thing. There's something about playing a top-down Zelda game when you beat the dungeon, or you in the dungeon, you get the new item, and it just feels so good. I had that feeling when I played the Link's Awakening remake, because that's all that game is. It's just getting new items so you can go different places, and it made me so happy. And Tunic is doing the same thing for me too, in the exact same way. It's just, I love a good moment where I get a new item and I go, oh, I saw a hook back there a while ago. Now I can hook to it and like go to a new area. I love it.
Yeah, I think that's awesome.
Me too. That might be my top one on this whole list so far. Honestly, wow. Yeah, you might have outranked all my other ones, which I'm fine with, because this isn't a competition and these are not ranked. This is just a list of 10 that we have thought of. Also, I'm adding a fifth one, Tyler.
Okay, great.
Just so you know, I have a fifth one. I just didn't write it down. Okay, so my fourth one, though, is, as we mentioned the gravity gun before, Portal and Portal 2. And I mean, I think everyone is pretty like, yeah, the Portal thing was a pretty awesome, crazy new mechanic when it came out, right? It was a puzzle game, but it had this great story too. And this goes right back to what Tyler was talking about with they show you how to use an item and then they raise the stakes on it and you do something crazy with it. And is the Portal 2 goo just called goo? I couldn't remember.
I think it's called gels. I think they're called, I want to say they're different gels, but maybe I could be wrong.
I called them goo, but I think you're right. It's definitely
goo
gel.
Is more accurate.
It's definitely gel. But even that like blew my mind, because I was playing Portal 1 and then when Portal 2 came out, I'm like, how could they top Portal 1? How can they do it? Well, they give this amazing story and then they add this whole new crazy cool physics mechanic that lets you like shoot and accelerate off to places and bounce, and it's awesome. And I loved it.
I love the way that game subtly conditions you to know what surfaces can and can't be portal surfaces, without really ever explicitly telling you. I don't think they don't ever say like this type of surface is what you can use. It's just like the way it's demonstrated to you, and because there's no penalty for shooting the wrong surface, you just sort of figure it out. And by the end of the game, you just intuitively know if you're able to place a portal on a surface, and then that pays off hugely in the end with all the moon stuff, because it's like it then just becomes like muscle memory. You just do it. The moon thing I love, with the spoilers, I guess, for this 14-year-old game now. But at the end, you put a portal on the moon and you suck the bad guy out into space, and it's very satisfying. But like earlier on in the game, they tell you that one of the gels is made of like moon dust, and that's why portals can adhere to it. And it seems like just a throwaway dumb fact, because there's so many throwaway dumb facts in that game that they just give you. And then you see the moon and it's A, white, which means you can put a portal on it. That's what the game's been subtly teaching you the whole time. And B, because it's the moon, you can put a portal on it, because that's what the portal stuff is made from, is moon dust. And it's very satisfying. So sorry for the Portal 2 spoilers, everybody, but the game's old, so you should have played it already.
Yeah, it also makes you, it's like kind of like the same thing I was saying with the Titanfall 2 and the levels. Like, you start thinking the way the developers thought. Yeah. Which makes me realize now that game development is just trying to teach people things by showing them and not telling them.
Yeah, it's just tricking people into doing the right thing, and then they have fun along the way.
It makes me think about all the times that I solved a puzzle in a video game without looking like at a guide, and I felt like the smartest person in the world when a game developer made that and was like, no, that's exactly what you were supposed to do. It's just do the thing I made.
They're not out there to like stump you in that sense. Like they want it to be hard enough that you have to work to figure it out, but they don't want it to be so hard that you can't ever figure it out, because that's not satisfying for anybody, you know?
Oh man, I've had some D&D games where there are puzzles. There's also puzzles in this D&D book I have that are just pure evil. That I'm like,
Really?
Why would anyone want to do this? You know, to their players. And I think about that versus like a video game, you know, where it's like,
Yeah.
why? There's no way that players would remember this thing from 2 hours before, this random item, you know, a lot like your moon dust thing. But I feel like the moon dust thing is so obvious. Like, oh, the roof is open. There's the moon. What can I do?
Yeah. You could do it on accident too.
Exactly. Oh man, I love Portal and Portal 2. And we were talking about playing Portal 2 co-op together because we both haven't played it yet. And
yeah, we totally should.
I would love that. I would love that so much. Be two cute little robots running around, portaling it up. All right, what's your fifth one, Tyler?
My fifth and final one is the exact opposite of the last one I said. I like powering up without numbers. I also like powering up with numbers. I just like powering up in general. I think there is a fine line in powering up using numbers like experience points and leveling up and getting stats that is, I think that's satisfying. There is a fine line between things that feel good. I think Pokemon, a lot of JRPGs generally feel pretty good about that, especially if they're paced well so that you don't feel like you have to go back and grind. That when you realize that you have to grind and it's just like doing the same thing over and over and there's no challenge to the thing that you're doing and it's not inherently fun, that's when it starts to fall apart. So if you can pace your game so that the player never has to do that, but they still feel like they're powering up as they go along, that's the dream. I think Pokemon generally does an okay job of that. Lots of JRPGs do that. What I don't like is when it just feels like a time suck, like a grind for grind's sake. And I think Destiny and other MMOs are a lot like that because you never feel like you're getting more powerful. And I say this with tons of love in my heart for Destiny. I totally adore Destiny. I play it all the time. We have a great time with it. I don't play it because I like the leveling up system in it. That's one thing I don't like in it because you never feel like you're actually getting stronger. You only feel like you're getting less weak, and it feels like a artificial time gate, especially when they lock game modes behind certain power levels that were available, and then now it's the new season and the same game mode to play on the same maps to do the same thing you were doing before now requires you to be a higher level. That's what feels really bad, and it kind of burns me out once I start to see through the person behind the curtain there. That's when I start to churn out of something like Destiny until I get the itch again. Luckily, Destiny is carried heavily by how good it feels to shoot aliens in that game.
It really does. It just feels so good to shoot aliens.
I think other MMOs can sometimes do a better job. They don't necessarily make me feel like I'm getting more powerful either, but at least in something like WoW or Final Fantasy XIV, the older content is always lower level. So if I'm leveling up to reach a piece of content, it's always a new piece of content. I hate re-leveling just to access content I've already done, which is what Destiny does, you know? That's something that really bugs me.
I despise that we have to unlock stasis on all three of your different characters the same way.
Yeah.
It's just so boring. It's just so extra.
Yeah.
Give me an option to skip to the stasis part.
Yeah, and I just get bummed by Grandmaster Nightfalls being like, if they would introduce a new Grandmaster Nightfall strike, like a brand new strike every season, and then say, okay, but to do this one, you have to be a higher level. That feels better to me. I don't feel bad about leveling up for new content. But when they're going to take the content that I was just able to do and then say, well, now it's a new season, so you need to put in another 50 hours of grind before you can play the stuff you were just playing yesterday, that feels bad.
Yeah, definitely. It does feel bad. And I definitely feel like that's why I go out on these games a lot. Like, we tried to get into WoW, and I felt like I had to do so much leveling just to play the game with my friends.
Yeah. And Final Fantasy XIV is like doubly bad about that because you have to play through the stories of all the expansions, and they're good stories. Like they can hold their own, and some would say they're even better than any other Final Fantasy game. They're good stories. But like, if you are downloading this game because you want to play with your friends, you are not going to play with your friends for several hundred hours, which feels real bad.
Yeah, that's what happened.
Or you're not going to do the fun content with your friends. They can like level down and like run dungeons with you and stuff. But like, if you want to be raiding, man, it is a long commitment before you get there.
That's kind of why I stopped playing Final Fantasy 14. And so I was like, oh, I'm going to be playing this game. And by the time I'm like a quarter of the way through, you guys are going to be done with the new content already.
Yeah. And then they say, oh, it's fine. You can pay to skip. And it's like, oh, so your game is not fun in this way. And you're going to make me pay to not play your game. And that is like, that's a whole nother level of like, I don't want to, I hate that. I hate
Me
the
too.
pay to skip stuff. I'm like, look, if you want to let people just start at the higher level, just let them start at the higher level and play the newest expansion. Like, but don't charge people to skip the other stuff.
In some games, it feels like a ripoff. Like in Destiny 2, when you power up your person, you can just put your guns from your highest level guy on the new character, and it'll shoot them up so quick that paying the $10 to boost them is completely pointless. Like, you'll be at the boosted level in like an hour.
Yeah, it's pointless either way, because it feels, I think you hit the boosted level in not too much time anyway, even if you don't already have a character that high.
If you don't have a high level character, you're right. Probably like 3 or 4 hours. Still not that much time.
Yeah, it's not that much time, yeah. So it feels strange for them to offer that boost, because you won't need it. And like 3 or 4 hours is not no time. It's not an insignificant amount of time, but in a game that wants you to play it for hundreds and hundreds of hours, 3 or 4 hours is really not that much time.
Agreed. Well, my fifth and final game mechanic, and it's not, I guess it's a mechanic, but it's kind of a group of mechanics to form a thing, I suppose. And it's something that I didn't really know about until I played Destiny. I love cooperative PvE raiding that's good.
Oh, yeah, me too. And Destiny's got it, man.
The feeling you get, when you like all work together to solve a puzzle, especially going in blind, like we did with our friends in Deepstone Crypt, that was so rewarding and so fun. And I feel like it definitely felt like the journey over the destination. Like, I didn't feel like I was wasting time because I'm working with my friends and I'm figuring something out. And the puzzle was so the encounter was just so well designed that it clicked.
Yep.
And when we got it, we felt like we all knew exactly what we were doing, and we had our roles in, and we practiced, and it was just a really great, fun moment for us. The moment where we all realized that it was a space elevator, an elevator that took you to space. It was so funny to me.
Yeah. Oh, I'm going to space. What? No, you're not. You're not in space. Nobody believed Aaron when he said he was in space.
Oh, it was so great. And also when I learned that we could thunder crash Atrax and take like a quarter of his health off of it to save us some time because we were having DPS troubles. And I'm like, I'll try this. Yeah. And it was just...
That was fun.
Yeah.
I think WoW and Final Fantasy are also fun to raid in, not so much for the mechanics discovery stuff that we got to do in Destiny, but like the level of coordination among people, I think is fun. And those are where the mechanics of those games really shine. And I tend to think that MMOs like that with the hotkeys and stuff, they're most fun when you're doing the most difficult content, or the content that requires you to use all of your skills. And just most of the time spent playing in those games, you don't have to do that. You don't have to think. You just do your regular rotation and you'll get through it. And it's just not as fun. Yeah. Raiding is fun in both of those games too, but not as fun as it is in Destiny, man. Whew.
Yeah, I love it, and I don't know if it's necessarily a mechanic. It's more of a genre, I suppose, but yeah, it just feels really good. 6-player cooperative activity where we figure something out together.
Yep.
When it's well designed and it's good.
Yeah, and it's like hard. It's like the figuring out the mechanics is one thing, and then it becomes, can we execute? And like you spend like half your time figuring out what to do, and then the other half doing it over and over again until you get better enough. Like every time you're making progress and getting better and better and better until you've done it, and the feeling of completing an encounter is so good.
Feels great. And I guess that is kind of a combination of some of the mechanics we talked about before, of like the flow and then also teaching you things, and then because that's what a good raid does, is it teaches you a mechanic that you use throughout the whole thing, and then it really raises the stakes of it. And the whole, especially with Deepstone Crypt, it's all based on this operator. What's it? It's operator,
suppressor, and what was the yellow one? Oh, scanner.
And so everyone would have a role, and then those would rotate somehow, and it was like really fun to communicate and figure out what we were doing. That was just so fun.
each encounter was like the first one sort of teaches you, okay, here's what this thing does, here's what this thing does. Okay, you've assigned people to do the thing and they don't really have to do different things. And then as you progress further into the raid, it becomes like, okay, but now you have to switch. Now you have to, like, everybody has to know how to do every role because you don't know when you're going to have to switch. Like, somebody's going to have the, like, not have the ability to do the thing that they need to do, and somebody else is going to need to pick up their slack. And it like really tests the team where it's like, okay, can you figure out how these mechanics work? Can you apply them in a place where you're under pressure? And then it's like, do you know how all the other mechanics work that you didn't have to do now? Because now we're going to give you pressure and we're going to make you do multiple roles, which is like just perfectly layered. I loved it. And the stakes of Deep Stone Crypt specifically, like the stakes as you go further and further in, like it just gets more and more hectic in terms of storyline and what's happening too. That it just like perfectly encapsulates
and
what I love about
just when you
Destiny.
thought we couldn't gush over Deep Stone Crypt anymore, it has the best song in Destiny. Deep Stone Lullaby.
It has one of the best songs in gaming. Yeah. Stop this podcast right now. Go listen to Deep Stone Lullaby. And the place it's at. Yeah. Okay. Well, now we're just talking about. Here's another mechanic that I love. I love when music in a game perfectly matches the mood. That of like the area, and I'm thinking specifically of the spacewalk part of Deep Stone Crypt, because you're just jumping through space. The sound is very muffled because you're in space, and you're just listening to Deep Stone Lullaby the whole time, and it's so soothing and fun, and it just like it feels great.
Yeah, you're like shooting, but it feels calming and different. And like I can think of one of your favorite moments in gaming and music. I know exactly what it is. You ready?
Yeah.
It is in Red Dead Redemption 1 when you go to Mexico and you're riding your horse. Oh. I know you love that.
I love it so much.
In fact, I think if this is a good question for people, like, one, we want to hear your favorite game mechanics. Codex History Podcast at gmail.com. But we also would love if you have a moment where the music aligns with the gameplay in a game that you just feel is unforgettable and your favorite moment because of how the music lines up with it, you should send us an email too.
Yeah.
Because we love it.
Please do.
That's the kind of thing that I will play a game for. If you tell me there's an amazing moment when this and this, because you told me that, Tyler. I was playing Red Dead because I'd never played it. It was before Red Dead 2 came out, like I think like a year before. And you said, wait until you get to Mexico. And then I think I texted you because I know exactly what you're talking about.
Oh, so good.
Yeah, so good. But with that, that's our mechanics list. I'm sure we'll think of more mechanics too as we go along. Do you have I'm going to ask you what you've been playing this week because I have something I want to talk about new. It's selfish. It's a selfish what you've been playing. So what have you been playing?
Well, that's
Tyler?
okay. Well, I've been playing Destiny. I feel like I've been several weeks on the same thing. I haven't really played much Tunic. I've been working a lot. I'm preparing to take a trip next week. But I played a few rounds of Teamfight Tactics, which I enjoy a lot. So that's a good like phone game to play if you need a lot of time unless you play the faster game mode. But it's like not mechanics heavy. It's all 100% strategy. And I just think it's fun to play. So I've been having a good time with that a little bit. But yeah, I'm still kind of not playing a ton of games right now.
I played 2 games of Teamfight Tactics, and I had no idea what was going on, but I was having a good time. That's how I would describe it.
What's fun about it is you can stumble into, like, you don't have to be good at it to have fun because you can win just by getting lucky and picking the right things that synergize, right? Like, yeah, the people who know what they're doing, like, will win more often, but you can still do okay even if you have no idea what you're doing.
It's kind of like poker.
There's enough
in that
of a
way.
luck element to it. Yeah, exactly. There's enough of a luck element to it that, like, yeah, exactly. Like poker is a very good, like metaphor or something like that, or simile, because in poker it's like, yeah, there are people that are good at it, and while the cards they get are random, they know how to play those cards and they know how to bet and they know how to bluff and all that kind of stuff. But if you've got the best hand, you win, right? Like, you don't have to be good at poker to have the best hand. So
yeah,
similar.
Well, that's good. Well, I've been playing Tunic again. I actually beat a new boss tonight, which is good because I only spent like an hour on this boss versus the last boss that I spent 3 hours of my life on, which is driving me crazy still to think about. It's just really upsetting when you look and you see you've played a game for 12 hours and you know that 9 of those were productive and 3 were slamming your head against the wall. I recently discovered something on YouTube, and I haven't played these games, but these games are super short. And so I can watch a YouTuber play it in full and get an idea about it. Did you know there is a fishing horror game genre?
Fishing horror?
Like it's a fishing game, but there's horror elements to it. And I've watched one so far fully, and I'm in the middle of another one. So I'm going to talk about the one I've watched this person play, and I should buy it. It's only $1.99 on Steam, but now I know how the game plays and how it ends because it's only like a playthrough is 30 minutes long. It was made during a game jam, and it's called Fishing Vacation. Spoilers, I guess, if you're going to play this game. I should say that, I guess, ahead of time.
Does it not bill itself as a horror game?
It does, but it's funny because when it starts, first of all, it's a Game Boy game. Like, it's a modern Game Boy game that looks like a Game Boy game, but it plays on PC in, like, a little Game Boy window looking thing. Like, I think it's called a Lame Boy is what it says on the thing. And the premise is it's like a fishing vacation, and it does like a classic fishing game announcer voice, and it's like exciting, right? And the premise is you're going with a friend to a cabin that is his uncle's, and you just remember the trout there were huge, and you're going fishing, and then creepy stuff starts to happen. The uncle's missing, yada, yada, yada. It goes downhill. But the fact that this Game Boy game pulls off legitimate eerie horror is so impressive to me.
Wow. I'm looking at screenshots right now. I'm like, it looks like this would be hard to make scary.
Yeah, it would, but you'll watch it and there's certain moments like where you'll turn because it's very decisive in how it does it. So when you go fishing, you see the window view, but you can turn left and right, and those are out of frame. So when you look left, you pan slowly, and sometimes there's stuff there that moves and just disappears, and they really pull off the eeriness of it. I won't say it's like jump scares because, let's be fair, it's a Game Boy game, but it definitely, they pull it off, I think. And I was just really impressed, and I'm really impressed with the creativity of people to make a Game Boy game that's kind of spooky, especially one about fishing. But then I'm watching a new one now that is an N64 fishing horror game, and I don't know how creepy it is.
Is this a whole genre, fishing horror? Oh, reviews for Fishing Vacation. The first one is Fishing Vacation is possibly the best horror game released for the 2020 Fishing Horror Jam. So this is a whole genre of itself, I guess.
Oh yeah, so that's the jam. So I should look up the person that made it real quick. Let me do that.
Tibowa Games.
Tibowa Games made it. Let me look up the person who did the video too. So the video is done by it's a YouTuber called Manly Badass Hero is their name. And they just do a good job going through it, and they show you the multiple endings and stuff. It's like a 50-minute long video. So if you got an hour, if you want to watch like a real TV show length thing, but it's a guy playing a horror game, I find it very interesting. I'm just blown away by the creativity of people that make Game Jam games. And
yeah,
I kind of think doing a history on the Game Jam would be a fun thing to do someday, like how they started and how they originated, because some really creative stuff comes out of them. Really creative stuff.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. It's called Fishing Vacation, and I think it's $2 on Steam is how much it costs. So if you like horror games, it's probably worth picking up. And again, that person that does the YouTube video is Manly Badass Hero is their name. And they look like they only play horror games. And there's all one word, by the way. Because they're also doing this one called Earl's Day Off. That's the name of the N64 one I'm in the middle of right now. And it's just funny to see a horror game done in horrible graphics. But I love it. If you want to send us an email, though, you can send us an email at codexhistorypodcast@gmail.com. And speaking of emails, we have one to read. Tyler, would you like to read Anarch21's email?
Sure. This one has the title Digimon and Dragon Quest. Hey guys, I've actually played some of the Digimon Cyber Sleuth series, which FYI seems to regularly go on sale for the Switch, for the collection of both games. While it is sort of similar to Pokemon, where it differs in a big way is the ability to evolve and de-evolve your digital monsters. Also, in the game, you are given an amount of memory space, which can increase, but each Digimon uses an amount of it. Because of that, you can have a large party of monsters or a small one, depending on how much memory each one uses. Odd thing about the games is that while they have English subtitles, all of the audio is in Japanese. In other news, after 80 hours, I finished Dragon Quest XI, and wow, what a great game. What console do you guys think is/was the best for JRPGs? For me currently, it's got to be the Switch. Spider Butts, Anarch 21.
Oh, that's great. Congrats on beating Dragon Quest XI.
Yeah. Console that I think was the best for JRPGs. I think you're right. The current one is the Switch because there's lots of old ones on it. There are new ones coming out for it. You got the Xenoblade games. You got tons of Final Fantasy games that have all been made for it. But I think historically, I definitely got to give it to PS2 if you're also including the PS1 library because PS2 plays PS1 games. I think the PS2 still is maybe better, even if the library, if you're considering the library separate. I think the PS2 is probably still a little better than PS1, even though there's a lot of great JRPGs on PS1. But also, Super Nintendo is pretty good, but those are all like early JRPGs where there's a lot of good stuff in there, but there's also not all of it has aged very well in terms of just mechanics and stuff.
I'm gonna say something a little controversial, probably. It might be. It's not a hot take by any means, but to me, I love playing a JRPG on a handheld. So I agree that now the Switch is because it is portable, but I would go with like a 2DS or a 3DS because there are a ton of JRPGs on those. Yeah, especially when you look at the library that you can buy from the shop online.
Yep,
and there's some like that's my favorite way to play a JRPG is like on a plane or waiting in an airport.
Yeah, on a handheld. Because
this game is going to last this entire flight. Okay.
Yeah.
And probably 10 more flights to come. Okay.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to be playing Pokemon Arceus on my flight coming up. And the other one to consider is the PlayStation Vita because you can play all those great PlayStation Vita JRPGs, Persona 4 included. You can play all those great PSP JRPGs, Persona 3 included, and you can play, there's like a lot of PlayStation 1 games on the store you can download, so lots of good PlayStation 1 JRPGs as well, so, and portable, so that might be a way to go. What were you going to say?
I was going to say that Pokemon Arceus, I feel like is definitely one of those games that you feel like you get more powerful, but it does not feel grindy.
Yeah, because you're doing different stuff, like to fill out the Pokedex entries, which is really cool.
I didn't grind any levels of Pokemon. Like, I sometimes just threw guys in my party to be like, okay, well, this Pokemon will go up in level while I play, but I don't know if I'm going to use it or not. And then I still beat the final bosses without having to grind anything, which felt good.
Pretty good. Also, the boss fights in that game, I think, are fun, where you throw the little they're foods. You just do a food fight. It's fun. Yeah. Well, thank you for the email, Anarch21. And again, if you want to send us an email, you can do that at codexhistorypodcast@gmail.com or go to codexpodcast.net and use our contact form, which is that's true,
working and wonderful right now. You could also join our Discord if you want by sending us an email or going to my Twitter at Mecoletta, MECOLETTA, and clicking on the pinned tweet at the top of my profile. Tyler is on Twitter as well at SneakerElf, ELPH. I think that's everything. The one thing that is important to note, this is episode 199. Episode 200 will not be happening for 2 weeks because Tyler is traveling. And so we will be having a Codex Remaster come out next week. We're going to make you wait for it. It's kind of a cliffhanger-y thing. But I think it'll be really fun, the episode we do. So with that, we'll see you next time. Thank you so much for listening. Tyler, do you want to say bye to everybody?
Goodbye, everybody.